There's a lot of statues popping up around Auburn these days, and finally we're getting to talk about that as it relates to baseball, and there's an obvious candidate who deserves to be commemorated in such a way. Let's talk about that news and the details of it. But before we do that, I want to welcome you back to the channel. Whether you're a member of the Auburn family or a fan of another persuasion, this is the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content tends to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the content, and thank you to members of our booster club like David Strain, who help produce videos like this. It's getting harder and harder to walk across Auburn's campus without seeing a statue in some format, and I love it. I love seeing all of these great Auburn figures finally being memorialized all across campus, especially as it relates to Auburn Athletics, when we talk about Bo Jackson, Cam Newton, Pat Sullivan, Charles Barkley. Finally, though, we get to talk about some baseball stuff with the news this past Friday that the Auburn Board of Trustees, as it was previously speculated on social media, approved the building of a statue of Auburn's greatest baseball player thus far, Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt, who is a legend mostly with the Chicago White Sox. This should come as no shock to Auburn Tiger fans, as he seemed like the most likely choice when you look at the other sports who yet to have a statue as a candidate to be memorialized in such a way. I'm very excited that this is happening, and it kind of feels like this is the right time for something like this to take place. And we'll get into some of the details of why that is in just a little bit. But I really am happy now that the big three, as we love to call them, Bo, Barkley, and now the Big Hurt, are going to have a statue, not necessarily next to each other, but very close proximity to each other at their unique venues across campus. Now, officially, there have not been a lot of details announced about this at all. Really, where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, all that kind of stuff. But if you really look at it and analyze some of these things, it's really not hard to piece together the puzzle that might be forming for a Frank Thomas statue. So that's what I want to do here, is talk through some of that, the who, the what, the when, the why, and the how, all of those type of discussions about what this statue is going to look like and how it's going to take shape. So we'll start off with obviously the who. We know who that is. It's Frank Thomas, really easy, so we can just keep moving on. The what, and what I mean by that is, what will it look like? Well, obviously it's going to look like Frank Thomas, but I'm kind of thinking, what is the makeup of it going to look like? What's the stance going to be like? While there is a commission being put out to decide who will win the opportunity to build that statue, I believe you'll probably see the same company that did the coaches' statues do it again, because it seems to match the aesthetic across campus with all the other athletic statues that have gone up. That's just a guess. A lot of this is going to be speculation, but I think you'll probably see that. In terms of what it'll look like, well, he is known for his offensive prowess, especially his big swing. That's why they call him the Big Hurt. So my guess is you will see him in a swinging stance for his statue. It seems pretty obvious, although there's some pretty good stances of him fielding a ball at first base, so maybe that'll be the case. So now the when of when this will be happening. The timing of this seems very appropriate with this season kind of moving towards its back half. Obviously, it's not going to happen this season. You really can't build a statue of that magnitude and put it out there before the season ends. Frankly, the last home series for the 2022 season is going to be here before you know it, so it's obviously not happening this year. I think it makes logical sense for the commission to take its time through the summer and probably build it through the fall, and would make sense to have it opened up and displayed for everybody to see at the start or very near the start of the 2023 baseball season. Now, does that mean opening day at Plainsman Park, or does that mean a significant series, or maybe even SEC play? I don't think they'll let it get that long, but they're going to probably pick a very big weekend that coincides maybe with a basketball game, because there is some overlap there with baseball typically starting in February, where they can make a big event about it for the whole weekend. Now let's talk about the where, and this is quite interesting to me because it opens up a whole lot of other conversations we can have about the space issues for Plainsman Park. I love Plainsman Park, but one of its problems for me is that it is landlocked between tons of stuff that will never ever change, at least in my opinion. I mean, if we just go around a circle talking about what surrounds it, obviously Jordan-Hare Stadium, a huge parking garage that facilitates not for just baseball, but football and the rest of campus activities as well. There's a power plant behind it, an academic building, a somewhat new athletic and regular dorm facility. There's also a major road running along its right field side, which also backs up to Beard Eaves Memorial Coliseum. So you kind of get the picture, especially if you look at a map. There's not a lot of space for Auburn baseball to expand its facilities currently as is without getting really creative. So that kind of limits your scope of where the statues will go. Usually you see these type of things right out front of the facility so everybody can come up and take pictures. So that seems like the logical choice. They could get creative and actually do it inside the park, maybe in the courtyard after you purchased your ticket and you enter. But my guess is they're going to want people to be able to walk up to it, take pictures, and see it for themselves, even without going into the baseball game. So if you look right at the front there, you'll see some very limited space between a parking lot and the front gates where this probably will reside. And you've also got to think about this with the where. This isn't the last Auburn baseball statue that you're going to see. I'll throw two names out to you that I think are pretty obvious: Tim Hudson and Jimmy Hitchcock, the namesake of the field. So those are probably coming somewhere down the line. So you've got to build it just like they did with the Heisman Trophy statues, expecting more, and the Auburn football coaches as well. You really got to keep that in mind going forward. So the spacing here is going to be crucial in an already landlocked Plainsman Park. And now I want to talk about the why. Why is this happening now? Well, if you look at the progression of what's been happening with stuff on campus and specifically for athletics, it makes a lot of sense that some attention would start being diverted towards baseball. So if you think about what has happened with football recently, they've gotten one of their biggest needs, that they needed a brand new football only facility for their purposes up, running, will be coming very soon in the future for us all to see. That has been taken care of, and there's not really anything pertinent that has to be done with the football facilities after that point right away. So they seem to be good. Basketball, that's the other part of the big three sports that we like to talk about a lot. Those needs have been taken care of. Bruce Pearl's contract is locked in. They've had commitments for expanding and for making improvements on Auburn Arena and various other things I'm sure that we don't even know about. So those needs seem to be taken care of for the future, which means you can now start diverting attention and funds for the athletic programs everywhere else, but specifically for that last part of the big three, Auburn baseball, and doing things like this. It's just the reality of the beast that while I even preach here on this channel to love all things Auburn, you really have to come to grips with the fact that football and basketball, especially these days, are kings, and baseball is part of that trio that tends to run Auburn, especially Auburn Athletics. Regardless of all of that, that's just speculation at this point, but I think a lot of it makes sense about the who, what, when, where, why, how, all that parts of questions that we want to talk about with this statue. But I'm just so happy that Frank Thomas is finally going to have his statue out there, finally memorializing the big three, Bo, Barkley, and the Big Hurt, and you can just make a little trip around campus to see all of them now. So excited to see it coming in the future. I want to know what you think about this topic, some of the things that we talked about here, and what you think, how, when, why, what, how should they pull this off for Frank Thomas. If you enjoy this type of content, please do help support it by smashing the like button. And if you want more from us, be sure to subscribe along with hitting the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads or live streams. There's ways to help support our content listed in the description, such as hitting the join button here to become a channel member for $1 a month, or heading over to the E2C Network Booster Club at patreon.com/E2C Network. Sign up for $1 a month there as well, with other tiers to get yourself other perks for supporting our content. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.